Hello dear students, you are welcome in this session. Dear students, in the last video we talked about elements of prose fiction, and in that video almost we discussed 7 elements of prose fiction like plot, characters, subject or theme, context, local or setting. Then we also talked about point of view, linguistic devices and others. Now dear friends, we are going ahead in this series of prose fiction, and in this video we are going to talk about types or kinds of prose fiction, because it is very significant to know the general types of prose fiction. If you think about prose fiction, you find there are many types, many kinds of prose fiction based on various devices employed in prose fiction or employed in novel. For example, you have types based on theme, you have types based on point of view, you have types based on other elements which are used there in the prose fiction. But dear students, in this video we are going to talk about only basic or the general types of prose fiction. I will tell you all the types of prose fiction in this video, but we will take only those who are very important, and I think those are very important for students. So we will discuss them in detail with their examples. So this is the outline of this video, and I have prepared for you a very fine PowerPoint presentation. Let's look at it and start. Types of prose fiction. Now dear students, as you can see, we are talking about types of prose fiction, and here I have categorized prose fiction or divided prose fiction in 2 major types. Very first is traditional types of prose fiction, and the other is modern day types of random types of prose fiction. So we will have look at these 2 basic types of prose fiction, and then we will move forward. Now dear friends, let's talk about first traditional types of prose fiction, and later we will talk about modern day types of prose fiction. Now what are the traditional types? Here you can see, just I have made a list here. You don't get confused of this traditional and modern day types of prose fiction. It is only for your information, it is only for your knowledge. Just you should know about these all types, and hence I have listed here. Don't get confused with these types of prose fiction divided into traditional types and modern day types. It is just for your knowledge, and I will take only those types which are important for you, which are very significant for you, and those will be from your exam point of view. So we will talk about that in detail next, and I will pick some from traditional types and some from modern day types of prose fiction. Here you can see the list. Traditional types. In traditional types we have 12 types of prose fiction. Very first we have autobiographical novel, then we have anti-novel, Bildungsroman, epistolary novel, Gothic novel, stream of consciousness novel, then we have Picaresque novel, then we have allegorical novel, psychological novel, historical novel and social novel. So we are not going to talk about all these types, only we will pick a few, and you need to understand only those which are important. Next we have here modern day types, or we can say that it is also you can categorize as random types of prose fiction. And in modern day types you see here, very first we have mystery or suspense, thriller or horror, crime or detective fiction. So this is the very first modern day. Now you can categorize based on different elements employed there in the prose fiction, and here you have suspense fiction, thriller fiction, horror fiction or crime fiction, detective fiction, etc. Second, we have romance or romantic fiction. Third, we have scientific fiction or sci-fi. Next we have fantasy. Now dear students, one thing you should remember here, that though we are categorizing all these prose fiction, but they might intermingle. They might have elements of these different types in each other. For example, if you are talking about mystery novels, you may have some elements of romantic fiction, you may have some elements of scientific fiction also. So it is not a very strict kind of categorization, but it is only for our understanding. We can broadly categorize all these prose fiction into these types. Then we have women's fiction, children's fiction, young or adult fiction. Then we have speculative fiction, Then we have family fiction, next bio or autobiographical novel, then we have popular fiction, commercial fiction, literary fiction, sentimental novel, cult or coterie novel, western or eastern novel. It is based on the region, you can understand. Then we have bestseller fiction nowadays, which is very popular. If some novels has a great sale, more than 10,000 copies, it is categorized as bestseller fiction. Then we have prophecy, erotic or pornographic novel, satirical novel, farcical novel, theological novel, allegorical novel, colonial novel, post-colonial novel. All these are modern day types or random types of prose fiction. You can understand. It is only for your knowledge. Don't get confused with all these types. And now we will talk about the basic or general types of prose fiction, which are very important from the point of view of your examination. So let's start. Very first, we are talking about autobiographical novel here. Now, as you see, its name suggests it is autobiographical, means there are elements of autobiography of that author. Here, you can see that in this novel, generally we do not have the actual names or actual places, but these names and places are disguised. So, they have given another name or another nomination for that particular things appeared in that novel. Then it is different from autobiography. Now, what is autobiography? In autobiography, you find all elements are real. They are based on real life events, real life incidents. But in autobiographical novel, you do not have, it is fiction. After all, we are saying it as fiction, but some autobiographical elements may appear there. Some incidents happened in the life of author, and based on that incident, you can find the same event, same incident in this particular novel. So this is the autobiographical novel, very first kind here. And we have example of this autobiographical novel. Very first, we have The Way of All Flesh by Samuel Butler. It is autobiographical novel. And we also have some Charles Dickens novels like David Copperfield and Oliver Twist. So these are autobiographical novels, for example. Next, second time, we have Bildungsroman. Now, if you look at this term, you find that this term is a combination of two words. It is actually a German term. And in this term, we have two words, Bildung and Roma. In Bildungsroman, the very clear meaning here we have, Bildung means education and Roma means novel. Now, it is a novel of education. It is an educational novel, you can see. And in this particular novel of German type, Bildungsroman, the growth of that character is stressed. The growth of that character is explained. The growth of that character is described very clearly in such novels, and this growth includes the psychological development as well as physical development of that character, and moral development also has given special significance in Bildungsroman. So this is a popular type, old popular type we can say, and here we have examples. For example, we have Rudyard Kipling's Scheme. Then we have a very famous example by James Joyce, an Irish author, Irish novelist, and he wrote Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is a Bildungsroman. In this novel, he stresses the development of an artist, how artist is created, everything he talks about there of the growth of that artist. So this is famous example by James Joyce. This is second type. Third type, dear students, we have campus novel. As its name suggests, it is based on the campus of a university, campus of an institution. So the characters, places, events, everything is taken from that campus. Means it is set into on the campus, or we can say that in an institution. So this is also called as institutional novel based on the campus. Next example, here we have Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis is a famous example of this campus novel. So just you remember, the novel is set on campus, and here we have example of Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis. Fourth type, here we have epistolary novel. Now what is epistle? Epistle means letters. It is in the form of letters. So such novels are in the form of letters. The meaning of epistle is letters and hence in the form of letters. Now what happens in such novels? Characters exchange letters. This is important. Some characters send letters to other characters and also they receive letters from other characters, and in this course the novel happens. The events happens all in the letters. Here we have very famous example of this epistolary novel. Samuel Richardson's Pamela or Virtue Rewarded is a very famous example of epistolary novel. In this novel we have many letters, and in modern day we have Arvind Adiga's The White Tiger. White Tiger also is an epistolary novel. It is written in 7 letters. These letters are sent to the Chinese premier Jiabao in the novels. Let's move to the next form. We have next Gothic fiction. Now what is Gothic fiction? Gothic fiction is nothing but a type of fiction in which we find supernatural elements. We find the elements which creates horror, which creates a very serious kind of atmosphere in the novel. For example, such novels are set in haunted places like old castles, graveyards, the lone houses or deserted houses, big bungalows in which we find the horror is created. So this is the Gothic fiction, and here we have examples. For example, very famous, we have Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto, and Radcliffe's Mysteries of Udolpho, and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Frankenstein is composed in 1818 and very famous for its Gothic elements. Again we have Wuthering Heights, also includes Gothic elements by Emily Bronte. Next type, here we have magic realism. Now actually magic realism is a mode of narrating stories. So story is told in a way where we find myths, we also find combination of dreams, fairy tales, and you also have these stories narrated in realistic or rational manner. And here we find supernatural is made to believe as common and natural. Most of the time supernatural elements are introduced, and these elements readers think are real. They are presented in a manner as they seem real. So this is a very basic feature of magic realism. And friends, here we have example of magic realism. Here we have Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude and Michael Ondaatje's The English Patient. Next we have number 7, historical novel. Now in historical novel it is a very simple kind. We find events or incidents or characters or places taken from history, in the past history, and we also have people from history and based on these histories, but these are not actual histories. You should remember very carefully that these are novels, these are fiction, and they are based only on historical setup. For example, we have Leo Tolstoy, very famous novel War and Peace, in which you find historical characters, in which you find different types of places narrated in the history today. Now imagination is added in this history. It is not pure history, it is a fiction, and hence it is called as historical novel. But you can find historical incidents same. For example, you find many novels based on First World War, Second World War, but these are not histories. Histories are different. Histories states actual events, states the true picture of that particular period. But in historical novel you have picture, but it is imaginary. There may happen some imagination in the novel. Now here we have example Walter Scott's novels Ivanho, Kenilworth, Waverly, The Talisman, all are based on history. These are historical novels. Next we have naturalistic fiction. Now naturalistic fiction very simply rejects the idealized experiences. Most of the times author states ideal experiences in the novel. He states that this thing should happen, this thing should not happen. So this kind of idealistic attitude is presented, but it rejects naturalistic novel directly, the very idealistic fiction. For example, you have in India Dalit fiction. which is ideal, which rejects the idealization, which states the naturalistic, the real, the true sense of the events, the true things there in the novel or prose fiction. It has experiences as it is in the life. Whatever experiences characters have in their real life are stated there. Actually, this trend has been made famous by a French novelist called Emil Zola. Now, dear students, here you can find this naturalistic fiction has its extended version as realistic novel or realistic fiction, and realistic fiction has its own extended version in the form of surrealistic novel. So this is a chain: naturalistic, realistic and surrealistic novel or surrealistic fiction. In this way you understand. And the very famous examples here we have Emil Zola's novels Germinal, The Lady's Paradise. These are two very famous novels in the category of naturalistic fiction. Next type here we have novella. Now novella is a very simple type. You find you can have this novella based on its form, based on its we can say that the length, very length of the novel. It is longer than short story and shorter to novel. Let me show you. Here I have a novella called Animal Farm in my hand. You can see this is Animal Farm. It's a very small novel. You can see only here in this version I have let me tell you how many pages it has. This novel has only 124 pages. So this is the novella, 124 pages only. This is Animal Farm, composed by George Orwell. And next I have in my hand The White Tiger. You can see this is White Tiger and it has many pages. So you can distinguish a novella and novel from the length itself. In novella you have very less length. For example, we can say that it is longer to short story, but again shorter to novel, full length novel. And here we have The White Tiger, full length novel, and it has, let me tell you how many pages, 321 pages The White Tiger has. So it is full length novel. This is the basic difference between full length novel and novella, so you remember better. And we have examples. There are many novellas. The trend of novellas nowadays has become very famous because people don't have time and authors write according the taste of people. They write novellas instead of full length novel. If you look at the War and Peace, it is more than 1000 pages of novel. But here you find only 100 pages or 150 pages in the novella. We have famous examples: Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, Ernest Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea, George Orwell's Animal Farm. These are very famous examples. Next we have number 10, Picaresque novel. Now this word picaresque also is borrowed from Spanish word picaro, means trickster or deceives people, a person who deceives people, and from that word we have picaresque novel. What happens in the picaresque novel? Just we find that the characters wave stories as real and authentic, but those stories were not real or authentic, just they are stories based on the tricks of those characters, and generally readers or people easily believes in those statements or in those stories which are presented by the characters in the novels. And in such stories we find people believes the person is the person might be talking true, so the events he is stating might be true. These types of things happen here in picaresque novel. And here we have very famous examples of picaresque novel: Daniel Defoe's Moll Flanders, Henry Fielding's Joseph Andrews, and Tom Jones. These two novels written by Fielding. Lawrence Sterne's we have The Life and Opinion of Tristram Shandy, which is famous only as Tristram Shandy, and it is composed in second person point of view. Very complex narration used here in this Tristram Shandy, which is a picaresque novel. So next type here we have science fiction. Now science fiction is based on imaginary technologies and scientific advances in the field of science. We find there are many novels based on this scientific fiction. It is also called as sci-fi fiction. but it is said about this fiction that the events, incidents or scientific advancement or whatever technologies might have discussed there in the fiction may be true in the distant future. It is not absolutely true, but some kind of things may true in the distant future. So we can say that it might be the base of some scientific advancements in the future. So some scientists may take motivation or inspiration from such stories, and there may be some true technology developed in the distant future or in coming future. So it is not absolutely true, but it is said about sci-fi or scientific fiction. And here we have very famous examples. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, it is sci-fi scientific fiction. And most famous we have H.G. Wells, The Invisible Man, The Time Machine. Different types of novels he composed based on this science. And in nowadays you find there are many novels which are based on scientific advancements or scientific technologies. So let's move to the next type. Next type we have sentimental novel. So sentimental novel is generally based on emotions and feelings of characters over there in the novel. So it presents the sensitive and emotionally open characters. In the fiction, there are many characters who are morally sensitive with their emotions, and they express their feelings, and everything is based on the emotions in the novel. So these novels are called sentimental novels. And here we have examples of Henry Mackenzie's The Man of the Feeling and Oliver Goldsmith's Vicar of Wakefield. These are sentimental novels, and we find that there is in 18th century a trend in the sentimental novels, or we can say that emotional novels. So dear students, here is the last type of prose fiction, and that is stream of consciousness novel. Now you see, this stream of consciousness novel is a term which is coined by William James, who was a psychologist, and we find in such novels what happens, a flow of thoughts in the waking mind is presented. There is a flow in the mind of characters, the flow of thought, and that flow of thought is most of the time revealed in such novels. Stream of consciousness, if you look at this word consciousness, so you find it is related to psychology. And we also have progress of the thoughts of characters. We have progress of the thoughts in the mind of characters. Sometimes they think forward or they think backward. Most of the times there is no accurate line of their thinking. There is no we can say that solid kind of thinking in the mind of those characters. Sometimes these characters seem confused, they are unable to take decisions. So most of the times we find that there is a dilemma in the mind of such characters, and just they stuck in dilemma, what to do, what should not be done. These kind of things happen in the mind of characters. And here we have very famous example, James Joyce Ulysses, Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, and Mrs. Dalloway. So these are some of the examples of this stream of consciousness novel. Actually Virginia Woolf has made this novel very popular. For example, we have two novels here, To the Lighthouse and Mrs. Dalloway. And if you look at the very character of Virginia Woolf herself, you find she is psychologically disturbed most of the times, but she composed very fine novels. Virginia Woolf was a very fine novelist who wrote many novels, and you also have some states of stream of consciousness in her own mind. So these novels also reflect the psychology of authors, psychology of the novelists or prose fiction writers. So dear students, this is all about the types of prose fiction. Don't get confused with this all types of prose fiction. Only think about 13 types of prose fiction here which we have elaborated, discussed in detail. Now if you find anything to share with me, you can comment below, or if you think there is difficulty in understanding these types, so you can comment below in the comment section. I am ready to answer your comments. So thank you very much for watching this complete video, complete session on types of prose fiction. Let's meet in the next video. Till, thank you very much.